thy power throughout the universe displayed. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art! How great thou art! Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art! How great thou art! When Christ shall come with shouts of acclamation and take me home, what joy shall fill my heart. Then I shall bow in humble adoration and there proclaim, my God, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art! How great thou art! Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art! How great thou art! Deep river, my home is over Jordan. Deep river, Lord, I want to cross over into campground. Deep river, my home is over Jordan. Deep river, Lord, I want to cross over into campground. Oh, don't you want to go to that gospel feast that promised land, where all is peace? Oh, deep river, Lord, I want to cross over into campground.
brought you a lot. Thank you very much for that. That's a blessing. Well, as I mentioned earlier, there's a couple of things we want to accomplish this morning. Number one is to celebrate the memory of Jackson Sheats. And what we'd like to do now is just kind of go through just a brief overview of his life. He was born in Memphis, Tennessee in 1926, one of two children, Jackson and Bertha. And after completing his education, or one of two children of Jackson and Bertha, and after completing his education at Columbia University in New York, he worked for the American Viscose Corporation in Chicago, Illinois. He studied voice with Robert Long in Chicago. He sang in the chorus for the Lyric Opera and was a tenor soloist at the Rockefeller Chapel in Hyde Park. An avid fan of movies from the 1930s and 40s, Mr. Sheats was an encyclopedia of famous movie stars of that era. He also had an enormous love for animals, especially cats. In 1964, he moved his family to Europe and sang as a lyric tenor with the City Theater in Germany. In addition to 52 performances of The Merry Widow and the operetta on the Rhine, there Mr. Sheats sang more than 20 leading tenor solos on opera stages of Germany between 1964 and 73, including the role in Macbeth and the German premiere of Benjamin Britten's The Beggar's Opera in the Cologne Chamber Orchestra. In 1973, he gave a full evening recital at the Wigmore Hall in London before returning to the United States to teach voice at Shenandoah University Conservatory. How many of you knew him from Shenandoah there? That's kind of your background. I talked to many of you who came over from Winchester today, that area. Thank you so much for that. Until he retired there as Professor Emeritus in 2002. During his years at Shenandoah, Mr. Sheats sang several performances at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., including the title role in Beethoven's Christ on the Mount of Olives with the Paul Hill Chorale, as well as the tenor roles in Handel's Messiah and in Beethoven's C Major Mass. He also sang the tenor role in Beethoven's Ninth Symphony for 2 seasons of the Shenandoah Valley Music Festival there out west in Western Virginia. Mr. Sheats served 2 terms as president of the Virginia chapter and 2 terms as the state governor of the National Association of Teachers of Singing. And I'm thankful this morning to be able to have your presence here today. And thank you so much for joining us for that. And I asked the family if they would be willing to share something about the life of their father. And David, you're going to try your best to get up here and talk about the man that your dad was and to sum up his life. And then after we're done, if you're able to, we'd love to hear from you. And so the family's asked that we open up the floor. If you'd like to share something, you can stand up right where you're at. This room's small enough. Many singers here today, I think you're pretty verbose. You can stand up where you're at and just talk a little bit about the life of Mr. Sheats. We'll start, David. Why don't we start with you? And why don't you just tell us a little bit more about your dad and who he was? Come on.
Thank you all for coming. Over the past couple of days, I've come to more fully appreciate how much my father came to touch the lives of so many of his students and colleagues. He always enjoyed hearing of the students' many accomplishments in the fields of voice, including those who went on to careers on the stage, stages of famous opera houses, community theaters, and choral groups. Equally, he enjoyed hearing of those who, like him, went on to careers teaching others from elementary school through those who have followed him in teaching at Shenandoah. In addition to teaching voice, my father liked to open people up to the greater world around them, much as he had his eyes opened when he was a young man of 18, attending college in New York City. He experienced a world there he hadn't known existed before. He found a world of opera and Broadway, and he got to see Billie Holiday perform live at small blues clubs on the Upper West Side. Yet it took another 20 years before he had the courage and conviction to strike out and begin to follow his dream of singing opera. So it must have given him much joy helping guide his students to follow their dreams. I want to thank all of you here today, and those who were able to visit last night, and who have reached out by both social media, phone, and card. You shared with me and my family how much my father touched you and yours. My father truly was an original, and you'll be deeply missed. Goodbye, Papa. I know you're definitely in a better place.
In 1994, it was the only New Year resolution that I ever kept to myself. And I decided that year that I would take professional voice lessons. Well, you have to understand that that year I was due to be 40 years old. And so I remember the first thing I asked him was, am I too old? And he said, you're just young. You're just a young thing. So I went to my first lesson. And I was standing outside the door. And I heard this voice come out of the room. And so I thought there was a few people in there. And when the door opened, it was time for me to go in. There was just one person in there who was taking a voice lesson. And she's not here today, but her name is Johanna. And he introduced me to her, and I remember going to her senior recital. But I said to him after 30 minutes into my lesson that I need to know now whether or not there is something there for you to work with, or am I just wasting my time and my money? And he said, the one thing, I will always tell you the truth, and that you are not wasting your time and your money. And I would always say to him that when people would say to me, thank you, you know, all your voice is beautiful and so forth, it got to the point that it would be a little embarrassing. And I said, what do you do with that? He said, you simply say, thank you. Thank you very much. And I would say to him that I thank, first of all, God for the gift that He's given me. But I thank Him for developing in me what my mom always knew was there. So he can say hi to my mom now because my mom died when I was 15 years old. I am so grateful for him. And my last lesson with him was October 2013. So we will go to Lansdowne and pick him up and then go over to the center or the place there and would rehearse. But he would always tell me the truth whether I wanted to hear it or not. You know that doesn't sound right. What is that coming out of your mouth? That's not right. And I said, okay. And he always had a problem getting me to roll an R. Well, I still have that problem. But I got to meet Michael and Amy and Karen and all these wonderful people, you know, through him. And so he will always, every time I will open up my mouth, I will always think of him and what he has done for me. So, thank you.
Jackson was a man who appreciated excellence. He appreciated excellence in singing and in teaching and in line and in acting, and he had standards, and he expected them to be met. And this was so wonderful, and as we just heard, he would tell you, yay or nay. Okay, and he loved excellence in that he loved good stories, and he could tell them. And you know, sometimes we forget Jackson was absolutely wonderful with the written language. We would forget that he was a newspaper man at one point, and his command of the English language was wonderful. Sometimes I would have to bring some stuff to him to edit, and he says, "What do you mean here?" And so he would clean it up, and I would really look good. And Jackson did it. And so he was also the kind of teacher who not only was interested in what came out of your mouth, but he was interested in the student. He kept track of his students. And he would say, well, why did they do that? Or advocate, I'm going to call them up. And this type of thing. So he was one of a kind. He was an absolutely delightful. And it was nice that his office for a long time was right at the end. Because you could go in and he'd say, come here. Okay? And he'd keep you informed. And so it was wonderful. He was he was one of a kind and a delightful person and a man of excellence.
the word, but I don't remember the occasion in which it came up. I came to Shenandoah in 1973, and I was unloading my car to take some boxes into my office. And this person walked down the hill who I had only met once, and he offered to carry a couple of boxes for me into my office. I shared this incident with someone, and said, I think the person was Jackson Sheats who helped me carry boxes. And their comment was, well, that's something to remember.
He was a dear friend. I was dressing this morning. I asked my wife, well, which suit should I wear? She said, you better wear the best suit you have. Jackson was a gentleman. He dressed beautifully. He was elegant. He was had a great sense of humor. I loved that office at the end of the hall, right next to the door in Armstrong. I spent many hours in that big leather chair in that office. We alternated being therapist and patient. But I wanted to say one thing. He was two things. The most dedicated teacher to his students of any teacher I ever knew. He really, truly loved the students, and we would talk many minutes, hours about all the different students and how we could help them better and understand them better. I never saw a teacher that had that kind of dedication to the students and wanted to give them every kind of opportunity he could. He also was a dear friend, and I can't remember. It's sort of a difficult day, but oh, I know what I wanted to say. I never, as a choir director, I learned so much from him as he would talk about the students, and I've never seen a voice teacher. I think he was probably the greatest voice teacher I ever known, because he had such an instinct for just even hearing somebody once, and if there was a problem, he had that instinct to just know exactly what the problem was and go right to it. And that was truly a sign of God's grace that was bestowed on him as a teacher. He was a tremendous teacher, and he dedicated all of his energies to the students that were blessed to study with him in Shenandoah.
Thanks.
David, I want to say thank you for sharing Mr. Sheats with us, with a minimal amount of us. The sacrifices that you made and that he made for a number of us to be where we are today. There cannot be the correct words of the amount of gratitude that can be expressed at this moment. He opened up worlds for many of us. He took us out of places where there was no life. He showed us worlds that we could not have imagined. Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
We would be much amiss if we did not mention Jackson's pride in his family. I've been in the rehearsal more than once, and he'd say, "Mother's waiting."
Because I had met my wife doing the Detroit Guys and Dolls, which was a non-singing role. And I've been a saloon singer mostly since I was 13 years old with a guitar. And I realized that I was going to a voice teacher, which was new for me. And so I bought a nice little baritone book, and since Sky Masterson had been singing in my ear, I decided I would sing I've Never Been in Love Before. And after I finished, and he looked at my baritone book, he said, we're not going to be doing that repertoire. And so I've been buying all new books. And I now know the tenor repertoire that I am blessed to know. I knew nothing about it. I knew very little about musical theater, except that I stumbled into Naked Detroit because I wanted a paycheck. And after Patricia graduated, we continued in studio, and we would come later at night and go to that office at the end of the hall, and then repair to Violino, where many nights in the parking lot, going back to our car, after one or two more limoncellos than we should have had, we were singing high notes. And they're really great in the parking
parking lot. You sound almost like you know what you're doing, and of course he did. And it culminated one night as we were walking through, and a couple who was coming down the sidewalk turned into the parking lot and applauded, which was probably better than getting arrested. Anyway, I just want you to know Jackson was a great teacher, but he was also a tremendous amount of fun. And I know Patricia will.